You can tell it's a new season because I've grown a mustache and cut my hair. Oh, I'm obviously just kidding. These are both fake. I know how much it would disappoint my friends if I changed my appearance. I'm just kidding again. I'm not your friend, and you have no say over what I do with my body. And speaking of harsh realities, the world of Dark Souls is frightening and murky. How can you truly understand Dark Souls lore without living Dark Souls, grinding away tirelessly in inhospitable environments under uncharitable overlords? To truly understand Dark Souls lore, you must first understand the desolation of working at a job. Have you ever thought about the term boss in a video game before? Those terrible enemies have the same title as the people you'll be working for the rest of your life. What a silly coincidence! Dark Souls is known for wildly difficult bosses that prove themselves on the battlefield. But can they prove themselves in a more difficult setting? The Lordran Hills Business Park and Commerce Center. It's across from the mall. Today, I'm ranking every Dark Souls boss based on how good they'd be as a manager. I'm not dancing this season. Welcome to the Dark Souls Corp onboarding seminar. Now, I'm only going to be speaking about the Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 bosses, no other Soulsborne games. I was originally thinking about putting in the Demon Souls, but they actually got integrated into the Dark Corporation in a very messy merger. All of the managers got sacked, so we're not talking about them. That leaves us with 96 Dark Souls bosses and mini-bosses, and it leads us to the difficult part of our journey. How do we objectively answer the subjective question, what makes a good boss? So I started researching the X qualities of a good boss on places like LinkedIn and Forbes, and then I fell down the rabbit hole of the hundreds of corporate blogs, and at the end of this journey I realized it didn't matter at all. What does matter is making a catchy, PowerPointable mnemonic device. So here are the 5 C's that make a good boss. Number 1, clear vision. Can this boss communicate their goals? Give clear steps on how to achieve those goals. Does this boss clearly hold their big old arm way up in the air before slamming it down on you? Number 2, consistent feedback. It's important for a boss to let you know that you've made a mistake, like challenging Seath the Scaleless before putting on your Ring of Sacrifice, you absolute fool, you child. Number 3, cherishes employees. A good boss values employee perspectives and rewards good performance, like when a boss decides to die when you hit it in a good way. Number 4, compassionate leadership. Honest, trusting, worthy of respect from their employees. The kind of boss you could chat with at the Estes cooler. And the 5th and final C, can really just go to town on a motherfucker. Slices! Dices! Big old crunchers! Someone who is willing to do what needs to be done when the going gets tough. Or someone who reveals an abyssal dragon that they've been keeping under their armor this whole time. This is our main criteria for what makes a good boss, but for 96 bosses, it's gonna be hard to differentiate their management style with just these 5 C's. Which is why I'm introducing the HR index. If they're over here, they get a lot of HR compliments. If they're down here, they get a lot of HR complaints. Let's be honest. Some really well-loved bosses are very bad leaders, and some really good leaders are skeezy as hell. So let's rank some Dark Souls bosses! Here's our scale. We're gonna start out with the neutrals. They're the standard boss, so I'm just gonna skim through them. Guardian Dragon, the Pursuer, Old Demon King of Song. If you're watching this video and you see yourself exhibiting these lackluster tendencies, I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to be better than the Royal Rat Authority, who vomits acid all over the floor multiple times a day and is still considered a pretty okay boss? Aim higher. Let's talk about the pushovers. Now, these are like my favorite substitute teacher in high school, Mr. S, who would go off on class-long tangents about his youth traveling the world instead of teaching us about Lord of the Flies. I loved Mr. S. Objectively a terrible teacher, though. Champions Gravetender and Gravetender Greatwolf. This guy's so fun. He brought his dog into work. I love dogs. Literally nothing's gonna get done today. Vort of the Boreal Valley. He runs around on all 4s. He's really disrupting the walking space. It's very ineffective. Iron Golem. He's sweet, sorta bumbling, and you've asked him to approve your expense reports like 5 times already. Ava, Lud, and Zalin, the King's Pets. Literally baked into the title, they're teacher's pets. They suck up to the king. Seath the Scaleless is a real sweetheart, but he is very risk-averse, and if you destroy his crystal, he becomes mortal and takes it, like, really personally. The Fume Knight, he's got 2 sides, 2 swords. Look, he's still got his old sword back when he had your job, but eventually he is gonna get rid of that sword. He's gonna be a real asshole about it. The Lost Sinner, she, and I quote, eternally punishes herself for the sins of her past. It's important to have a boss that recognizes their flaws, but it's bad if your boss locks herself in the conference room and flogs herself eternally. I booked the conference room for 3. I need to get in there. Crossbreed Priscilla goes invisible at the first sign of conflict. That's not showing up for the company. Lorien and Lothric, the princes, one of them hangs around the neck of the other one, who's actually doing all the work, which is the worst form of micromanaging. The 4 kings. You don't fight all 4 at once, you fight 1 and then the rest come in slowly, which is kind of like every group project you had in high school. The Karthus Sandworm. If you ignore them, they'll ignore you. And some people like that managing style. But also if you stand on the sideline for long enough, someone else will shoot big arrows into them and then they'll die. And that's a bad boss. The Dragon Slayer armor is actually just a puppet for these big, wiry dragon butterfly things. So they're well loved by the higher ups, but only because they don't have any ideas on their own. The Ancient Wyvern is the epitome of pushover because you can just run through his stage and then kill him with 1 attack at the very end. This is perfect for the employee that likes to, you know, fuck around on Reddit all day and then send 1 email at 5 and then peace out. I don't know what that's like. I've never done that. And finally, this is sort of a technical pushover. It's the Ruin Sentinels. They're kind of like a board of directors in that they all look the same and do the same thing, which is to say not a lot, but you gotta suck up to them if you want to get anywhere in the company. Now we're gonna flip to the opposite side of the scale. We're gonna talk about the Sketchies. These have a powerful understanding of corporate leadership, but everyone hates them. The Boreal Outrider Knight is a mini-boss, but like you can tell he really wants to be a boss. Nashandra tricks you into opening the Throne of Want, even though she just wants it for herself. But Bowser, King Koopa, the authoritarian turtle with a penchant for princess napping. His very name strikes fear into the heart of man and mushroom alike, and he's also pretty good at figure skating. But when you focus on Bowser's many attempts to put the Mushroom Kingdom under his rule, you might forget that to fuel his violent vanity projects, he must put hundreds of henchmen into harm's way. And by harm's way, I mean in front of Mario. But me? I never forget the troops. And today, I'm honoring those who have put their lives on the line for a megalomaniacal turtle. Today, I'm presenting you with Bowser's military hierarchy. I can't go any further than that. I'm sorry. But Brian, I hear you ask, why does Bowser need a military hierarchy? And folks, I hear you. I hear your questions constantly. They come to me in my dreams like a prophet receiving visions from an angry god. Bowser needs a military hierarchy because of the Geneva Conventions. Y'all remember those things? Those little rules that keep you from committing war crimes? Look, I know Bowser is a bad dude, but I don't think Nintendo would actively create a war criminal and then allow him to sit in the backseat of a go-kart with a baby. This is thanks to how we define armed conflict. I read through the entirety of the Geneva Conventions in order to find this information, which turned out to be unnecessary, because there's a far more succinct definition in a far shorter paper. But do I regret reading the Geneva Conventions? Of course not. Knowledge is its own reward. And could I really call this an Unraveled if I didn't spend a whole day reading 224 pages of dense legalese for no good reason? Of course I couldn't. Of course I couldn't. If Bowser wants to keep his armed conflict above board, we need to codify his aggressions. So this means his henchmen need to follow a command structure, one that is not at all clear-cut in the games. All we need is a list of Bowser's troops. That's where this book comes in. It's the Super Mario Bros. Encyclopedia, the official listing of everything you could ever want to know about the 17 games in the main series of Super Mario Bros. The main series are just the platformers. None of the RPGs or spin-offs, but the silver lining to this means that I can spend a different Unravel traveled talking about those games, because God has cursed me for my hubris, and my work is never finished. Of the 17 in the main series, I'm gonna cut these 3 games because they don't have Bowser as the main antagonist, and I'm also gonna include Super Mario Odyssey because that came out after this book was published. That leaves us with 15 games and 226 enemies. I came to this